Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! I'm a correctional officer and work nights. After work, I normally just go home and sleep to get ready for my next 12-hour shift. However, on my days off, I take the time to do chores and housework. On this day, I did not have the night off, so I had to do what I could before going to bed. So I went home and picked up my wife and kiddos to go grocery shopping. We get to the store and start doing the usual. A lady comes up to me and my family and starts asking for directions to items. Some I know and some I don't, so I tell her what the things I know and apologize for the things I don't. Now mind you, I'm in full uniform. Taser, cross draw, cuffs on each hip, fogger and left thigh, spray and all the other items I use at work. On top of all that, I smell peppers, sweat, mold and rust as the facility I work at is old and moist. She seems upset but walks away. We continue shopping and after a while we meet up with a lady and she spots us and comes down, but this time she's pissed. She starts screaming that I'm the worst employee ever and I should be fired for not helping her. She continues on about how I should be catching shoplifters or back watching the cameras instead of flirting with this witch. Yay, she's one of those. I interrupted her rant and say the usual words of out of work here, but she of course fails to hear them, as is the usual on this up and continues her rant, yelling and screaming that she picked me to help her because I'm the asset protection and should know where everything is. I asked my wife to take the kids and find the manager for this Karen. Lady, from now known as Karen, is none too pleased to hear her secret identity outed and increases her volume. I tried to explain to Karen that I'm a jailer, not loss prevention at a grocery store, and I tell her to go pound sand and find someone that actually works here. I then turn my back and start to walk away when I'm nailed in the back of the head and fall forward in a full face plant. I am hurting, dated, and can feel glass all around me. I roll onto my back and feel around. This witch just brained me with pasta sauce. She's still yelling and screaming and raises another jar to throw. I grab my taser, aim and pop. Down she goes. Hard I get up, stumble over, flip her around, and cuff her. She's out like a light, my guess is a fall, and I then sit back down and take an inventory of myself. I am bleeding pretty bad from my hip but seems to be alright. My wife, customers, and management show up as I'm checking over Karen. I pulled my trauma kit out the back of my belt to get to the smelling salts. I tell them to call 911 and continue checking on Karen. She's awake, dazed, and blissfully quiet. The rest goes as expected. The police arrive, question me, question her, watch the cameras, and I refuse medical treatment but do press charges, as my wife is a boss witch. I say that with reverence. She is medical trained and will take good care of me. When I went home, she asked if I wanted staples or glue. I chose glue. She glues my head and we take a shower, go to sleep, and she wakes me up from time to time, which I know isn't the best idea, but hey, a few days later I am writing this, so I ended up alright. I get a call a couple hours before my shift ordering me to come in early to talk to rank. Dreading this, I follow my orders and get up, shaved, showered, and dressed. I go in and have to explain the whole thing again and again. Then they show me the video from the store. It's exactly as I explained. Though I did note she could throw far better than I could have dreamed. They order me not to wear my uniform outside of work and tell me I'll be working and booking tonight. I am not very good at booking, but look forward to the training and activity of it, as the rest of the facility is slow and boring. Around 11 p.m. rolls around and who do I see being escorted into booking but Karen? I start to talk but my sergeant taps me and shushes me. He talks to the deputy bringing her in and they start doing the paperwork while I watch and try to learn as much as possible. She is charged with aggravated assault of a law enforcement officer and possession of miss. Who would have thought? Now Karen gets to live at my workplace. I don't get to work in the female zones, but the booking process was fun though. I wasn't allowed to do anything but watch. After she's booked, I'm told to report to another zone and end up finishing the night. Now, for the past few days, pasta jokes have been in abundance, and her nickname is Pasta Lady. Her court date isn't for a while, and she's reportedly not getting along with other inmates and is in detox shoe. I stumbled upon this sub about a week ago and have since been thoroughly enjoying myself reading the stories, and I figure I'll share mine. Just a quick history to set the stage. At a younger age, I moved from Chicago to Baltimore to take a job with the federal government. When I started, I hit it off with a couple guys, who've since become my best friends. We all lived together for about 5 years until one by one, we started moving on, getting married and so on. One guy, we will call him John, left our place of employment to take a job as a Secret Service agent. As everyone went their separate ways, I thought I'd make a smart decision as a young professional and buy a house. In 2007, right before the financial collapse. Needless to say, immediately after buying, I was upside down, big time, and struggling. I had some other co-workers move in, but they only lasted about a year before abruptly moving out, leaving me scrambling to find a roommate, and thus setting the stage for my revenge story. I ended up posting on a bunch of videos to find a new roommate. One guy ended up far and above the best option. We will call him Russell. Russell was a military vet who had served a couple tours downrange and was now a sous chef at a local restaurant. He was easy to get along with, so I pulled the trigger in haste without doing the proper checks I should have, primarily due to being in a desperate financial situation. The first sign something was off was when Russell moved in. He came with just a couple boxes and a TV, no bed, furniture, and so on. The next clue came from me chatting up with him about his time in the military. On the surface, he could talk the talk, but as I got more nuanced, his answers became more, wrong. He claimed to be a former ranger, so he would have known the topics discussed. The final clue was a classic one. He started making excuses for rent payments on months too. But this time, I knew something was not right. So I politely told Russell to move out, which he did immediately. Once gone, I went to Home Depot to buy new locks, and much to my surprise, my debit card didn't work. Come to find out, Russell had stolen a checkbook and cleaned me out. Every cent I had in my account was gone. At this time, I am feeling a mixture of anger, fear of not being able to pay my mortgage, and disappointment to myself for not vetting him properly. When I ended up telling John, he was livid. He wanted every detail about the situation. Little did I know, John told all his co-workers and they immediately opened the case on Russell. For those of you who don't know, the Secret Service also deals with financial/economic crimes, albeit normally on a much larger scale than my savings account. Within a few days, Secret Service agents had tracked down and interrogated and arrested all the individuals who had cashed the fake checks on Russell's behalf. One turned and advised Russell would be at the jerk's last resort at the Baltimore Inner Harbor that night. John and his crew changed into plain clothes and went there to wait. Lo and behold, Russell shows up and acts like he owns the place. He starts announcing that he was leaving on a deployment to Iraq, so he wanted to buy the entire bar drink. It was my money, I should add. As he was standing there paying for everyone's drinks, John stood up and screamed, "Secret Service, you're under arrest." 3 agents slammed him down, cuffed him, and pulled him out, where 2 black SUVs rolled up on the boardwalk to take him away. My other friend who had gone to observe said the entire restaurant paused in stunned silence for about 30 seconds. They take Russell in, and by this time John says he's bawling his eyes out. The best part of the ordeal was John made him add, in his written confession, "I routinely pretend to be an Army Ranger, but have never served." Before being taken to the city jail, Russell asked John, "Why did the Secret Service arrest me?" To which John replied, "Well, you're up the wrong guy." Epilogue. The bank ended up giving me all the money back very quickly under a fraud claim. I ended up attending Russell's court appearance with John, where he took a plea and spent 6 months behind bars. Needless to say, I was a bit more careful in choosing my next roommate. Edit. I see a lot of comments about skepticism of how Russell was federally charged. I reached out to John and he advised they charged him on a state level due to the low scale of the crime, which explains why he went to city jail and why I attended city court. I did a quick search and found this, since I know you'll ask. 18 United States Code Section 13 allows for federal agencies to charge for state offenses, which would be offenses under state law in which federal territory resides. My college years. Back when I was an overworked, irritated, cranky little crap. I'm still a little crap, but I'm less cranky and overworked now. This story happened during spring tours during my junior year. Incoming prospects were being shown around campus. Engineering students such as myself were burned out with year-end projects, and the deans were busy bragging about how awesome this campus was and how educational it would be to come here, while neglecting to mention the freaking price tag. Okay, I might still be a little better about the whole college experience thing. Anyway, my roommate and fellow engineering student Ben and I were frantically trying to finish up our lab reports in time for submission when the Dean of Engineering waltzed through the big double doors to the lab. We were behind because our tutoring jobs both ran super long and we weren't allowed to leave before the students. The Dean ordered us to stop what we were doing and to clean up the lab immediately. Ben and I looked around, noting all the boxes of lab supplies that were left out by delivery people, and pointed out that A, we really needed to get this lab report done. 10% of our grade for God's sake. And B, hey, not our miss and not our job. The Dean countered by saying that if we didn't comply, he will tell our lab instructor to give us zeros on the assignment anyway, that it was our fault for not being more prepared. And he finished by saying, "You need to make this lab spotless. We want the tour to be memorable for these new students, and you will help to make it memorable." The lab instructor heard the last half of the rant as he walked in the door about the same time as the dean walked back out. He sighed and shook his head. "Sorry guys, tell you what, I'll try to push back the submission deadline by an hour for you guys, fair?" Ben and I both shrugged, already resigned to the fact that the lab instructor, while sincere, had a very minimal idea of how computers worked and certainly had no idea how to change a submission deadline. I pushed Ben out of the way of the computer. "You start, I'll finish the BSing here." It was universally acknowledged that I was the best writer in this class. Despite dyslexia, I had been raised by an English major mother and thus knew how to write absolute volumes about stuff I knew nothing about. In this case, I actually didn't know the assignment, so I figured I'd use spell check as a crutch and slam this bugger out. My roomie got started, I got typing, 45 minutes later I had our assignment finished and submitted. So I went to go to help Ben with unpacking boxes. Doofus wouldn't let me near the box crusher. Knowing my habits of experimentation and recklessness, that was probably a good idea on his part. I was a lucky bugger who found the box of industrial breast masks, the big particle ones that made you look vaguely like Bane from Batman, and got a brilliant idea. Donning one, I turned to Ben. What did the good doctor say about making the prospective's visit memorable? He gave me the stink eye. "Would you stop fooling with that and help?" "I'm helping," I protested, pitching my voice deeper. "I'm also planning." He threw a box in my head. "Practice your evil villain monologue later." We both know I'm the anti-hero. I shot back, blocking the box. "You're the villain. You even have a goatee." He stroked it thoughtfully, looking evil. "Good point." "Anyway, listen," I ordered. Then in great detail, I told him my plan. Now a little backstory. The engineering building was built into a hill. The first and second floors both had ground level access at right angles in the architecture. We were on the first floor. The double lab doors opened out to face the double doors about 12 feet away that led outside to the east, and this was so big lab equipment couldn't be wheeled into the lab with minimal fuss. Walk up the hill and you could wrap around the building to the south entrance if you so choose. Spoiler alert, we were about to choose. Ben and I finished putting the supplies away, then geared up. We donned the breast masks, lab goggles, full lab coats, heavy-duty chemical gloves and coveralls, shoe covers, hair covers, and the works. You could hardly tell our ethnicity, much less who we were. Then we chose our weapons. I opted for a beaker, which I have filled with dish soap and hot water and shook like one of those shake weight TM things I saw on the late night shopping channel that one time I drank too much root beer and couldn't fall asleep. I also grabbed some tongs because why not? Ben opted for a voltmeter that he taped random crap to and very carefully covered in foil to make it look even more scientific and scary. He coupled that with a fire extinguisher that he pulled out the wall and dipped in some dish soup suds to make it look like it had already been used. Appropriately geared up and armed, we crouched by the lab's double doors and peered through the crack between them. There was no center post, great for spying. We were just in time. The dean was there with about 12 to 15 prospective students and their families. The prospectives looked bored, the parents looked like they were trying to feign interest, and the little kids in the group were fidgety. The dean looked pompous. It was a perfect combination. I almost ruined it by snickering, but I was able to restrain myself by biting my tongue as hard as I could. The dean was in the process of pontificating on all the amazing things his lab had to offer and how we were the best engineering school in the area. We were in Midwest. It's not like there was any competition for a couple 100 miles, and how the lab that they were about to see was the safest. I was wondering why he didn't do this speech in the damn lab, pre-framing. I guess a lab was nothing special. When Ben nudged me. Oh yeah, that was our cue. We packed up, then blew through those doors like a rival linebacker through our football team's defense, screaming, "Look out! It's gonna blow!" at the top of our lungs. I made sure to slope a little foam out of my beaker as I ran, just to add to the ambience. We crashed through the outer doors and took off up the hill and around the side of the building. Glancing back as we took the corner, I saw the first two perspectives, the ones with reflexes faster than our team's defense, apparently running away from the building. Ben and I made tracks. We got in the house doors, ran down the back stairs, and re-entered the lab from the other side. The double lab doors had swung shut in our absence, but a peek through the crack showed that it wouldn't have mattered. The dean was outside trying to round up the tour, who had scattered to the four winds. We stripped off our gear in record time. I accidentally pantsed myself, I was in such a hurry, and put everything away. We rinsed out the beakers. Ben tossed the voltmeter chimera in his bag for breakdown later, and I hung the extinguisher back up. Then we grabbed a few textbooks and sat down at one of the tables, pretending to be studious. I told Ben to turn his book right side up for more realism. We didn't have to hurry. It was a good 5 minutes before the doors opened and the dean entered, leading the dubious tour. Man, if looks could kill, we'd have been dead and buried on the spot. He ushered the tour through awfully quickly, given the length of his prior speech, and gave us one last death glare as he hit it at the other side. A couple of the kids looked at me questioningly. I winked at them. They nodded, started snickering, and continued on their merry way. Ben and I were recipients of a lecture later from the dean on proper decorum and taking pride in our school or some such baloney. I interrupted to ask innocently, why? Was the lab not clean enough? Or did we not do enough to make the tour memorable? Which led to our dismissal from his presence due to blood pressure issues. A new rule was added to the school shortly thereafter, in the laboratory section. Students shall not handle any lab supplies without a faculty member present. However, we were never asked to, nay, we were banned from putting new supplies away again. Got an A on the report, by the way. I'm not sure if it was good enough to warrant that, but the lab instructor had a sense of humor, and I never turned down a good grade. Hello, this is my first time posting on this part of Reddit. I only recently discovered it and have a rather long story from my days working in a convenience store that fits this place perfectly. I used to work for a convenience store about 22 years ago. Let's just call it 812. And at the time that I joined them, they were still a division of the Southland Corporation. I ended up working for them for exactly 1 year, 7 months, and 11 days on the button. A very strange coincidence. Anyways, on to the malicious compliance. So I come in one day, around 3 to 4 in the afternoon, and the manager is not there. She has already went home but left a note. The very first thing she wanted is for me to get straight on the register without delay, as a coworker that was leaving was getting very close to overtime, which is not allowed. No problem, right? Well, there is a small problem. We only had one running register at a time, with a single till, and the store was packed with customers. I couldn't just hop on a register. The coworker that was leaving had to count her drawer down, and I then had to recount the drawer to make sure that it had the correct amount of cash in it. The drawer was supposed to have a specific amount of money in it. The coworker had to count it down to that specific amount. Then log what she had remaining to see if there was a discrepancy from her total sales for her shift. Meanwhile, I had to count it up to the specified amount to make sure that she did not make a mistake counting it. All of this had to be done before I could take over the drawer. Following the manager's order, we start the process as soon as I show up and inform the customers in the store that there will be a brief hold in time while we counted down the drawer and switched the shift. You could hear the moans from the people. Clearly, no one wanted to wait, but what could they do besides get into the line and wait, right? So there was this one lady. She was complaining under her breath at first. She was about the 8th or 9th customer back in a line of about 25 to 30 people. The store was freaking packed, no joke. I was ignoring pretty much everyone at first, just trying to get through the counting process as fast as possible so that I could start ringing up people. As my coworker was completing her counting and handing the drawer to me, the lady got louder and louder in her complaining, to the point she was using a normal speaking voice, like she was talking to the other people in the crowd, no longer just complaining under her breath. I was counting as fast as possible at this point, but she switched from just stating her complaints randomly to intentionally egging on the other customers. She was trying to get them to agree with her and to start a riot in the store, saying things like, "We shouldn't have to wait this long for service, should we? And we should get our stuff for free for waiting, right?" To the customers in line. I noticed that some people are starting to nod their heads at her provocations. At this point, I stopped counting and said out loud, "I apologize for the brief wait, but please understand that we are required to count down our drawers to prevent losses and theft from occurring. I am trying to count as fast as possible. I'll be just 1 more minute and then I can start serving people. Thank you for your patience." And went right back to counting. Well, while that quelled most of the people in line who were starting to fidget and shuffle nervously, that just made things worse with the lady. She flippin' blew it. And she started yelling she shouldn't have to wait for service, she should get her slushy and sandwich for free, and then she started throwing cuss words around, if this, if that, left and right. I stopped counting again and looked right up at her. And I told her, "Please, ma'am, stop using profanity in our store. There are a lot of children present." Since there were mostly families in the store, there were about 7 or 8 kids. Again, that just made things even worse. Nothing but a non-stop stream of profanity started spewing from her mouth. At this point, screaming at the top of her lungs. I finished counting my drawer as I told her if she doesn't stop, that she will not be served, and that she will be asked to leave the store. I'm trying to protect the kids in the store at this point. And the line has already shrunk to about 15 people because people walking out and leaving because of this lady. Well, she took that personally apparently. She started with, "You are going to serve me, and I will not leave until I'm ready." Yep, she started giving me that speech. So I glared at her and said, "Oh really?" I then promptly told her to leave as I started ringing up people. I told her that I was not serving her and for her to put down her merchandise and get out. Then came the "you can't make me" line, as she literally walked up past the other people in front of her, moving them out of her way, and she stepped right up to the counter. I repeated myself, told her to put down the slushy and sandwich, and told her that I was not serving her, and that if she did not leave, that I would be calling the police. Long story short, I did have to call the police, but she left just before they arrived. Now you're probably wondering, so where is the malicious compliance? Well, that came the next day. You see, just 15 minutes after the lady left the store, the district manager calls me on the phone and yells at me. Did you just call the police on a paying customer? He did not. He doesn't let me get in a single word before he starts ranting about customer service, this and that, and informs me that the lady will be returning to the store the next day, and that I will be apologizing to her in person, and that I will be giving her whatever she wants for free. The next day I come in, and the manager is there waiting to call me into the office, where I receive a write-off for talking back to a customer and kicking them out without a valid reason. The manager doesn't let me get in, not one single word to explain what happened. She then informs me that when a lady arrives, I will apologize, and then anything a lady places on the counter, she gets for free. I was honestly stupefied by this. I planned on waiting for the lady to show up and telling her to get lost, and then quitting, and walking out of the store leaving no one there. That was my plan. It didn't go that way though. Hours later, after the manager had went home, I was running the register when a lady walks in, with her father and husband and cousin and sister and several kids in tow. They all grab our shopping baskets and start filling them up. She comes up to me and says, "I was told by your boss that I can get whatever I want for free." When I see this, I'm like, no way. She doesn't think that she's getting everything for her whole clan for free, does she? I tell her to hold on just a moment, and I call the manager at home. She is pissed that I bothered her and doesn't let me get out any more than, "The lady is here, But the manager yells at me, telling me that she has already instructed me, and I try again. "Right, but she's here with..." The manager yells at me, "Do you want to get fired? Just apologize to her and give her whatever she wants." I smile. "You want me to give her whatever she wants? For free? Are you certain?" The manager yells back, "Are you stupid? Do you not hear me?" "Yes, ma'am." "As you wish." When the lady finally makes it to the counter, I do a very polite bow to her and apologize, making it sound as sincere as possible. I wanted to punch that smug grin right off of her face, but I kept it to myself and started ringing up the items in a basket that she was sitting on a counter. I explained to her that I had to ring them up first and then cash out the order, so that there was a receipt, $780 worth of stuff, and I was laughing so hard on the inside. The next day when I showed up, the store manager, the regional manager, the district manager, and one of our company's loss prevention officers were all waiting for me. As I was led directly into the office, I explained that the district manager had told me to give the lady whatever she wanted for free, and that when a lady came in with her entire family, I called the store manager at home because I was pretty sure that he didn't mean for her whole family to get free stuff. The store manager yells at me, "You didn't tell me that her whole family was here trying to get free stuff." And I calmly respond, "I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen to me. You called me names and asked if I wanted to be fired, so I did as you told me." They began reviewing the video, which has great audio detection. It was kinda hard to hear the manager, but when I explained what she was saying, they could make it out. They asked me to leave the room, and I could hear the volume of them talking going up and down from yelling to regular talking for another hour before I was asked to come back into the office. The regional manager told me that they had just reviewed the tapes from the afternoon that the incident with a lady took place, and he apologized to me and said that the lady had called the office and made up a whole pack of lies about what had happened, and that the DM had not reviewed the tapes before calling me. I was told that if the DM had done his job properly, none of this mess would have happened. I was then told that the lady was permanently banned from our store if she returned, to call the police and have her trespassed. Well, that's the end of it. I never did see the lady again, and just 2 weeks later, we had a new DM and a new store manager. I still love thinking about that to this day. I'm so glad that I did not just tell her to get lost and walk out. I'm a big guy, 6 feet, 275 pounds, and I'm not all muscle. I used to play soccer as a kid until I was 17 years old when I took a nasty knee injury that ended my hopes to play pro. I started to gain weight over the years partially due to bad habits and lack of exercise. I reached 325 pounds at one point, and I felt like I was about to die. And that's when I decided enough was enough and it was time to turn my life around. Started eating healthy and slowly picked up the exercise bug again. I also joined the 6v6 soccer league in my city where my friends had a team and invited me to play. I play soccer once a week, go to the gym thrice a week, then rest and chill. It was great. On a soccer pitch, you don't expect 300-pound guys to be running around or even be skilled enough to dribble through defenders. Most teams wouldn't even mark me. I played as a striker until I scored a goal or dribbled through two of their players. That earned me some respect on the pitch. I had competitor players come to compliment my performance after the games. I even made friends with league coordinators who at times cheered me after a nice pass or goal. It was just great. I felt I was alive again. The wrongdoing. At the time of the story, I had lost about 30 pounds. I was 295-ish. We were playing a long winter league, which is basically 14 games, 14 weeks, and we knew almost every team in the league, except for one team. It was the first game of the season, and we were scheduled to play the new team. A bunch of big guys that looked like they were straight out of an MMA competition. The game starts, and as usual, I am not marked. I literally had enough space to park a truck with no defender giving me a thought. I received the ball, ran for the goal, then buried it in the bottom corner. Easiest goal ever. 5 minutes later I did it again. Now I had their attention, and I was being marked by a guy who, from now on, we will call Jerk. Jerk tried every trick to take the ball from me and failed. The more he tried, the more frustrated he became. Then at one point, I had the ball, dribbled, and did a body feint and he dropped on his butt trying to correct his direction. I crossed the ball and we scored a third. It was humiliating, but I didn't mean it like that. He stood up and walked right next to me and said, "You think you're having fun, fat butt?" I tell him, "You're not really going to talk trash at a recreational soccer game, are you?" "I'm not talking trash. I'm just asking if you're having fun." "Yeah, I am." "And you?" "I will have my fun in a bit." I didn't really know what he meant, but I didn't give it a thought. A few minutes later I received the ball again. Jerk is like a step or two behind me. The next thing I know is my left foot, the one planted in the ground as I receive the ball with my right foot, is twisted. I hear a loud popping sound from my ankle and I'm on the ground. A moment later a jolt of excruciating pain in my ankle made me groan like an elephant stomped on my foot. The jerk has taken an illegal sliding tackle on my left foot and it tore my ankle under my body weight. Then he literally stood up and leaned down on me and said, "Now I had my fun." I was out of the game. Fast forward 24 hours, my ankle is swollen the size of a large grapefruit. I see a doctor who diagnoses that my anterior talofibular ligament has a second-degree tear. This is the strongest ligament in your ankle, by the way. I can't play any sport and only use my foot lightly for 8 weeks minimum. I made sure I submitted an incident report to the league after the game, then kept all the receipts for medical treatment as a result of the injury. It took a toll on me emotionally as it reminded me of my old knee injury that ended my soccer dreams. I was determined not to slip into depression again though. Even though I could no longer go to the gym or the pitch, I was still eating healthy and spent the next weeks planning my revenge. It took me 9 weeks to recover, which was better than the sports specialist predicted. I was back in the last game of the season before the 2 playoff games. We were playing Jerk and his team again. I had spent my whole recovery time doing my very best to get ready to make that game. Took physio's advice and applied them to the letter. Did anything and everything to make sure that I am good to play. I made it. Now, it was time to exact revenge. I concocted a plan with my friend Dave to exact revenge on the Jerk. One that would leave him with a permanent memento from yours truly. The Jerk likes to stay behind and make a vicious tackle, push or shove when the player he's marking is about to receive the ball. I was going to use that against him the worst way. In the game, I made sure the Jerk felt like I was scared of him. When I received the ball, I got rid of it too quickly. And if I was dribbling, I either passed it or let it go, as if I was avoiding contact. This encouraged him to stay with me and to scare me even more. He literally played the first 15 minutes of the game with a smug all over his ugly face. That was about to change. About 20 minutes into the game, we got a corner kick. Dave goes to play the kick and I stand in the box. The jerk is 2 steps behind. Dave was about to take the kick, then he stopped and nodded no. This meant the jerk was no longer in position and we couldn't do what we planned to do. This happened a couple of more times, then it's the 4th corner kick towards the end of the first half. Dave is taking the kick. He looks at me and he nods. Yes. The jerk is 2 steps behind me and is now marking me again. I put my hand up and shout, "Here, Dave." The jerk now commits to me. Dave then goes on to play the sweep perfect cross right above my head level. The jerk goes on to do his standard come from behind and do something nasty routine. At that very moment, I plant both feet in the ground, expecting the shove from behind, lean backward and launch my body towards the jerk. He's going for the ball with his head, and I'm going with my head in his face. He perfectly planted his face in the back of my head, his head going forward and my head going backwards. I swear I could hear his nose break on the back of my head. We both fall to the ground and I drop my 290-pound fat butt on top of him, catching him with my elbow straight into the eyebrow. His eye turned around on the ground. He has a cut on his eyebrow, his nose is broken and is literally pointing to the left, and he's bleeding. I shout, "First aid kit here please." Then tell everyone I was first aid certified and start sitting him up and leaning his head backwards to stop the bleeding. In the process, I pinch his nose to check if it's alright, and he screams like a little girl. Then I say, "Oh, it seems your nose is broken." League coordinators cart him out and an ambulance picks him up a few minutes later. After the game, he sent a message saying he is suing me for intentionally breaking his nose and cutting his eyebrow. The league coordinators did not support his incident report and said that it was he who went for me from behind and that I couldn't have anticipated that, let alone injure him so badly if it weren't for his own force. They also indicated that I was the first person to provide first aid to him after the fall. He had no leg to stand on and his claim was dismissed. Then I sent him a letter from my lawyer letting him know that I was suing him for my injuries 9 weeks prior, supporting that with doctor's report, physio reports, and the league's incident report, where the league coordinators concluded that his tackle was both illegal and deliberate. He had received a warning from the league that he will be permanently banned for such behavior. The league then went on to ban him from participating in the games. He reimbursed me $2,300 in medical costs. I scored 3 goals that game. We won and made it to the playoffs. Then we beat them again in the playoffs and won a league. As for me, well, I'm still on track with my weight loss.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.